There it is. We have our first conference final set. Last night, the Florida Panthers beat Toronto in overtime. Our boy Nick Cousins, off, by the way, a beautiful play by Radko Gudas, scores in overtime to send the Panthers to the Eastern Conference Finals. And just the night before, the Hurricanes beat the New Jersey Devils to advance, also in overtime, to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. Both teams won in 5 games. And today we have Heath with us, and we're going to just kind of talk about what we see this Eastern Conference Final looking like between the Florida Panthers and Carolina Hurricanes. Man, this is going to be a fun series. Heath, any thoughts going into this series that just like thing that stands out to you?
I think for me, obviously, I don't think this was a series that anybody saw really coming. Maybe the Hurricanes, but not the Panthers. But anyway, I think for me, really, it's Bobrovsky right now.
Mm,
How he's playing at the level he's playing. Um, I mean, he could. I wouldn't say he could steal this series for the Panthers if he can play. What he has been playing over the last, I don't know, week and a half or so. So um, I think he's been really a bright spot for the Panthers in the last, really since they put him back, put him into the playoff.
that's
So
a it's so interesting because that was something I was going to bring up as well. You have the former Vesna winner looking
yeah,
like a Vesna winner. Uh, the Panthers are getting the goaltending mixed in with everything else they're doing.
yeah,
Um, it's interesting because like Carolina has not had bad goaltending. Um,
no,
I
I
guess
don't think
they
they've had.
did get 8 goals scored on them the other night, but like every team has a bad night here and there. I sit there though and I look at this and I say Florida has such an advantage in net if Bobrovsky stays as is. I wonder, do you think this break will be bad for him, or do you think it'll be fine?
That's a good question because we know how breaks go sometimes in the playoffs, and when you're rolling like the Panthers are, this could spell almost disaster for them. But I don't think so. I think with the way that team's playing and how they've gelled, going into the playoffs, I really don't foresee Bobrovsky kind of getting hindered by this break. I really see it honestly probably helping him because they play. I mean, when they went 7 games with Boston and straight into another series with Toronto.
Yeah.
So, um, if anything, I think it'll help them. Like I said, it's a fine line to walk if you're the Panthers. I mean, you don't want to sit too much, in this break they have, but at the same time, they need to rest and kind of catch up for a second before they take on a really good physical, hard hitting Hurricanes team.
It's going to be brutal. I'll say this, as reported by Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts, apparently Bobrovsky is one of those goaltenders that needs breaks. Like he needs desperately to have time to recoup, recover, almost let himself heal a little bit. Like they said that the long break in the middle of this series was probably really good for Bobrovsky. Um, and so I think that this is probably not a bad thing to give him a few days off. And really, like you said, Carolina's a hard hitting team, a brutal physical team. Like if you sit there and say, okay, like I don't want to play Carolina. No one wants to play Carolina. I hate watching Carolina play because of the way they play is so brutal, right? And I think that this break is so needed for Florida, and probably Carolina too. I mean, they both just had pretty intense series. Here's the thing. I want to bring this up as we have this conversation though. Florida just won in 5 games. The Florida knocking out Toronto is way more impressive than
Yeah.
knocking out New Jersey. And I'm not saying New Jersey is a bad team, but I'm saying in the way that they play, I think that the Toronto Maple Leafs were a much better playoff constructed team. you have the center depth, you have pretty solid defensemen, you have just an all around pretty even keel attack there in Toronto. And you kind of look at New Jersey, and they're a fun team, but they weren't necessarily built for deep playoff success. And I do want, like, you just kind of feel like the Canes cakewalked past New Jersey in this
Yeah.
series. And I wonder if the ease of that is going to come back and bite them because they haven't had to. I don't know. Do you agree with that? Disagree?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, the Devils, obviously they were a good team this year, but they weren't, like you were saying, they weren't built for a long Stanley Cup run. I mean, you look at the games they did have in this second round against the Hurricanes. I mean, they were all, I think they got scored on 4+ almost every night. I can tell you, which, let's see, yeah. I mean, outside of their one game, they scored 8 goals, which was shocking.
And the last game in game 5,
And
that goes
in
into
the last
overtime.
game, they lost. Yeah, they lost in overtime. But I mean, the Devils just they don't. If the Hurricanes wanted to, I think they could have swept the Devils. And I think they wanted to. They just, obviously, the Devils. I mean, they had a bad night in goal. If
It's
you're the,
hard to sweep somebody. You
it's
have to
so
have
hard. I mean,
4 perfect games in the playoffs.
you look at the Panthers too against Toronto.
Mm.
I mean, you're sitting there like, and I was telling somebody this the other day. Um, it's just so tough to end a series. I don't care if it's in game 4, 5, 6, or 7, and whoever it is in 7. It's so hard,
Yep.
just because you can see the light at the end of the tunnel for the series, but the other team has to win. So it's just a tough thing to do. But I think the Hurricanes kind of had a much easier road to deal with than the Panthers did here in the second round.
I agree. I'll tell you, I have 2 trains of thought with this. One train of thought is, since Carolina had a much easier path to the Eastern Conference Final, a much easier path to the Eastern Conference Final, they are rested. They're ready to roll. They didn't have to put a lot of effort in. They weren't expecting to lose either of those series. They were expecting to beat the Islanders. They were expecting to beat the New Jersey Devils. And I would say they're expecting to win this series as well. But you look at the Florida side of things and you say, okay, and when I say that, when they were expecting to win, these highs of winning probably weren't that high. They're seeking more. Florida beats Boston, major high, big deal, huge win. I mean, for Florida this year, you could win in round 1 and lose in round 2. And I think people would have been like, hey, it was a tough season to beat the Bruins. Great job. Understandable to lose to Toronto in the second round with the season we had. But they don't. They then beat Toronto. And if you saw the interview with Matthew Tkachuk, he was like overjoyed, right? He was like, this is amazing. This feels good. I love this. This is after the "We Want Florida" chants. We beat them and to win in this bill. Tkachuk is just like there's a needle under the fingernail, right? That's what he's trying to do to Toronto. But you sit there and I look at that and I wonder at what point, like, does it work for or against Florida that they've been playing tougher series that mean more? And part of me is like, okay, they just beat Toronto. That was a really big deal to them. Do they have the inspiration to keep winning, or is it like, hey, we had a good season? I don't know. That's just like, that's kind of my thought process, and it's hard to predict. Who really knows?
Yeah, I'm at the same boat. Do they? But my other thing is, I mean, granted, they're going to have a few days off here.
Oh yeah.
But, and I guess I was going to say that the way how this team went into this year's playoffs, and like you said, beat Boston in 7, and that was a tough series for them. A tough series against Toronto. Obviously, it was in 5 games, but that's still. I mean, you're
All the
playing,
games were close.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't no 6-1 hockey game like you had in the Hurricane series. So I guess the other thing you look at is, how exhausted or beat up is this Panthers team. Now, granted, like I said, they're going to have quite a few days off here. Not a ton, but a few. And do they if they're beat up pretty bad and that we just don't know it. I don't know if they can get over the Hurricanes, especially with how hard or how physical of a team the Hurricanes are.
Carolina
And I
looks
think
good,
that's what
man.
we'll see.
Like Carolina looks so it's a Rod Brindamore
Yeah.
game. And
Yeah.
it is so good from
I mean,
beginning to end. They just look good.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're fast, they're physical, they do everything you want in a playoff team. The only thing I ever worry about with them is their goaltending.
Yep. That's true.
And that's really the only spot I have always worried with Carolina.
I'm going to ask this question. You are general manager, and you get to look at the roster of both of these teams, and you get to choose one player to be on your team for this series. Who are you choosing?
I think I'm taking Bobrovsky with the way he's played.
Wow. And
Yeah.
see, here's I was gonna say Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you and I just both took two Panthers players. That's an interesting thing to me, because did we just say the two most important players in the series are Bobrovsky and Tkachuk? But then again, on the other side, you've got guys like Aho and Burns, and we're not going to go through the entire Carolina roster, but like guys who are showing up to the Stahl, Jordan Stahl, we got to talk about this.
Yeah.
All three
Yeah.
Stahl brothers are in this series,
Yeah.
which is going to be amazing. And Eric Stahl returns to Carolina to play in a playoff series. Like this is going to be a fun one. I think beginning to end, I think the crowds are going to be incredible in each one. Are you more excited for Carolina games or Florida, like home games, Carolina games or Florida?
Carolina.
Oh man,
I think so.
that crowd's going to be into it. I mean, we
Yeah.
went to game 4 of the Eastern Conference Final in 2019, and that place was ruckus, which is pretty wild. Super fun atmosphere. All right, let's do this. I don't think this series is predictable, but just for the joy of people watching this right now, let's make our picks so we can look like total idiots. Who do you have winning this series, and in how many games?
Man, I knew we were going to ask this because this is tough.
I don't think it's possible to accurately predict.
If I'm going to Hurricanes in 6.
Yeah, it's trending towards that feeling, isn't it? I'm gonna go Canes. Oh man, let's tell you what, Canes in 6 is probably the most accurate prediction. Just to be different, I'll go Canes in 7. But don't let me take this away from it. I'm cheering for Florida. Florida can do it.
Same. Yeah.
I want Florida to win so badly because I do not want to see the Carolina hurt. I don't know why I dislike them. I like Brindamore. I like Aho. I like Burns. I like most of their team.
I just want to see the Panthers win.
I just want to see the Panthers win. I'm in for it.
I think it's just something nobody expected.
Which is what we want in sports sometimes.
Yeah.
The unexpected. All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this Eastern Conference Final preview?
No, I guess we'll find out maybe depending on when this video is uploaded and podcast is uploaded. We may or may not have a determination on the West or one of the West.
We might get we're recording this on Saturday, May 13th. Dallas and Seattle have game 6 tonight. I fully expect Dallas to win that in advance, but we will see. Seattle can prove me wrong here. I am wearing a green color for both of them, right? But that will be exciting. So if you're watching this, comment who you think is going to win this Carolina versus Florida series. We want to hear your thoughts. Tell us why we're wrong. Tell us why we're right. Tell us just anything you think about this Eastern Conference Final. Is this the most exciting Eastern Conference Final we've had in years? I think yes. I think it'll be the most fun to watch for sure. Thank you guys so much for watching. Heath, thank you for joining.
Thanks.
If you don't mind hitting the like and subscribe button, and we will see you for the Western Conference Final preview.